Welcome to episode number 148 of CXOTalk. I'm Michael Krigsman, and today I have the distinct pleasure and honor of speaking with Lew Cirne, who is the founder and the CEO of application performance management software company, New Relic. Lew, how are you?
Oh, I'm very well. Happy holidays to you, and thank you for having me on the program.
Well, it's just great that you can join us today. And, let's start by give us very briefly a sense of your background. How did you come to found the company?
Well, my background goes, as it relates to the company and my professional life, really has to go all the way back to when I was 12 years old. Right around this time of year in 1982, when I got my first computer. In fact, it's sitting just right next to me in my office. It was a VIC-20, and that Christmas I discovered that, I'd found the joy in my life, or a primary joy in my life, which is software, and building, this incredible capability to create new things in software. And so I've been doing that now ever since then. And really that joy of what can be done in software to have an impact in the world drives a lot of what we do at New Relic, because our mission is to help make software great. I think there's an art to great software, but there's also a science to it. New Relic provides the science. Science is all about measuring things and then taking those measurements to make better decisions. We measure an enormous number of software applications and at very deep levels for about 12,000 customers today. And we do it in a real-time basis through our software analytics cloud. So that's a little bit about how we got here and why it matters to us at New Relic.
Okay, and speaking of great software, it is not broadcasting. And so bear with me a moment. I use Google Hangouts, and are we broadcasting, folks? Somebody answer me on Twitter.
Should I say we're having technical difficulties?
So apparently we are broadcasting. Okay, so there was a delayed reaction. Speaking of great software, when you use free services like Google Hangouts, you're kind of at their mercy. But you were saying you founded the company and you have about 12,000 customers?
Yes.
I've got it now.
Yeah, so, and what we do for our customers is we measure everything that's going on in their software, what the end user is doing in that software, to address three interrelated and important questions. The first is we measure and help our customers understand how healthy is the application. Is it running? Is it fast? Is it available? Is it predictable? The second question is, what is the customer experience? What is the end user experience? Is it a good experience? Is it improving? How many people are using your software, and how does that compare with historical trends? And then the third level of all of this is the business outcome. The whole reason why companies build software projects is to achieve some business outcome. And so tying the visibility of the business outcome, if you're e-commerce, that might be how much you're selling right now, or if you're a SaaS company, it might be how many people are using your SaaS product. Tying that data all the way down to the customer experience and the application health, tying that all together is super important, and we're the only company that does it. We do it with the cloud platform.
So that's quite interesting, this notion of both the user experience and the business outcomes. You're a very technical company, so explain the linkage between what you're doing and user experience and the business outcomes.
Well, think about it this way. In 2015, software is now becoming the de facto way in which a company connects with its customer. In the past, people might interact with their bank in the physical world by walking into a physical branch. But today, the way most people interact with their bank is through software, through the phone on their app. So if you're in business and want to stay connected to your customer, you need to measure what your customer is doing in your software. And because that is that's your connection to your customer, and therefore the data that you need to grow your business. So what we have at, what we started out with is just measuring the transactions flowing through that software. A transaction could be a request to log in, or to look up your balance, or to purchase an item on an e-commerce site. We were measuring how fast that was. But then we realized if we could build this big data platform on the data we were collecting where we threw away nothing, then we could also go to the specific customer or a subset of customers and see exactly what they were doing to answer business questions, essentially with the same data in real time. And combining those two is powerful and unprecedented.
So you're making this link between metrics regarding the technical performance of the applications and the software with the actual business results. That's right.
That's right. And there's a very strong correlation between the two. There have been many studies that have shown that a slow or buggy site will result in much poorer business results than a fast and highly reliable site. And so as a great before and after example, one broadly documented success story is how New Relic was brought in late 2013 to help fix healthcare.gov, where, as you recall back then, that was in a very challenged state when it first launched. There was inadequate visibility into why there were problems with the site, and New Relic was brought in after the president declared a tech surge, and we were installed into healthcare.gov, and literally. Almost instantly, there was visibility available to hundreds of people that could use our cloud service to figure out what was wrong and what was working. And that could help them turn that project around, and quickly came to a point where they were servicing the needs of all these millions of Americans so they could get healthcare.
Now, what about the user experience aspect? So you've linked it. So you've linked what you do to the business results, but what about user experience? Why does that matter, and whose user experience are you talking about?
That's a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, if people aren't enjoying using your software, then they're not going to use it. And if people don't use your software, then your project's almost certainly going to fail. So when we talk about measuring the user experience, what we mean is instrumenting not only the software on the back end on the server that can generate images or data for a mobile app, but we actually have products that go into the iOS and Android app and measure how good is that experience from the end user's perspective. We also do that in the browser, so we can see exactly how good the page loads are for our customers too. And we can slice and dice that in a variety of ways. Like, we can tell you if it's a better user experience on how much better is the experience on Wi-Fi for our mobile customers versus very specific carriers. We can also break it out by geography or by class of customer, because here's a common problem that we see is, especially in a lot of enterprise applications, the biggest customers often have the highest workloads or the largest amount of data stored in the application. So you've got this paradox where your biggest customers can often have the worst customer experience. And so measuring your customer experience by specific customer and segmenting out your highest spending customers is a great example of the kind of visibility that you need to have to make sure you're delivering business results. So
this is a technical discussion then, or a business discussion?
Well, we usually start as a technical discussion because we have about 500,000 people have used our product, and most of them are developers or DevOps people. And so that's how we enter the account. We think of it as 3 layers of maturity, starting with like the health of the software, and developers care about the health of the software they write, and they move into operations, who are responsible for keeping that running. That's the kind of the first stage of that application health. Then we move up to the customer experience, and that may go up to the application owner, who's responsible for delivering a customer experience, the business user or the product manager. And then ultimately, that whole project has business results attached to it, and so we can naturally go from there to the more senior executive. And making sure all those 3 constituents, or 4 constituents, I should say, are well aligned and looking at the same data to make sure that they're making good decisions together, that's what we uniquely provide.
One of the things I found interesting as I was preparing for our conversation is you speak about the company as an analytics company as opposed to a software performance company.
Yeah, well, this is my second company in and around this general space. I founded a company called Wily Technology in 1998. And when Wily was created, there was no category called APM. Wily is credited with creating that whole category, and that's now a multi-billion-dollar market, many players in the market. And many people think of New Relic as an APM company. But when I founded Wily and ultimately sold it in 2006, and after selling the company, I thought to myself, learning everything I had about APM and about software and about business, what would I do if I were to do it again? And a lot of that thinking came to New Relic, and I came to a few conclusions. One was, first of all, we have to be all in on the cloud. SaaS delivery is the only rational way to attack this problem, and it gives us a fundamental advantage, and it's a far better experience for our customers. So we decided to be the only to be a pure play SaaS company, and we're the only pure play SaaS company in this space. But then the second conclusion I had was I'd always felt like APM is this incredibly powerful and important must-have technology, and I'd had experience creating that market, but it was always a step towards something even more important. Right? The whole reason why we build software in businesses is to achieve some business result. And the more important the software is to the business, the more important it is to see what's going on in the software from a business perspective in real time. So this is kind of my, it's rare when you get an opportunity to revisit a similar problem with a clean sheet of paper. And that was what New Relic was. And that's one of the reasons why I think this company has turned out to have far more impact than my previous company.
But how do you get business users to actually care about software, what are essentially software development metrics?
Well, it's more than software development metrics. So as CEO of New Relic, and I have a development background, but I'm going to talk about my business head. I use our analytics product to answer business questions continually. The kinds of questions I answer could be, who are of all the accounts that use our product, of all the 12,000 customers that use our product, how many of them have more than 50 or 100 active users, and who are those companies? Because I want to see where's New Relic broadly adopted within a customer, right? So I can do that. I can segment that by country. I can segment that by how much customers spend with us. I can segment that by a city. Last fall, I was going to Dublin to visit the New Relic European headquarters there, and I had a few hours available in my schedule. So I did an instant query on our product to say, who are our most active customers in Dublin? Found a very recognizable name as one of our customers, and was able to spend time with a customer that now is that had an immediate business impact. In fact, we closed business based on that data shortly after my visit. Had I not had that data in front of me, I might have spent my time with the wrong account. Right, so there is it's now what I can also tie it to though on the technical side is that customer having a good experience using our software? Are they having troubles? So when I go and visit that customer, I know whether or not it's going to be an easy conversation about how they're using our product, or if we have some issues we need to address. So that's why you need both the business and the technical data together.
So you are aggregating, so you're collecting the data from the individual customer, you're aggregating that data, which of course tells you a story about that customer and their experience, but you're also aggregating data across the range of your customers. And so what are the kinds of trends or learnings that you take away from that aggregated cross-customer data?
Well, what we're seeing in our customer data is a couple of trends that are irrefutable now, but we saw it early and it has informed our product strategy, and it's why I think we have such a lead in the market. We saw early how rapidly our customers were moving to cloud computing. And so, for example, at New Relic, over half of our customers have at least some presence in AWS that they are using New Relic to monitor the workloads. So we have far more customers using public cloud, using New Relic for public cloud than any other APM provider by a long shot. So that informed our product roadmap decision, and so we introduced some new functionality specific for AWS last October that has had an enormous level of interest from our customers, and it even improves our value prop in a cloud environment like AWS. The other trend we're seeing is the migration from single language to multi-language and from monolithic to microservices. So, if I look at the applications from about a decade ago, you might have one or two tiers where lots and lots of code all went into, a single large monolithic web application or web service. Now with microservices, you have a lot more flexibility with your teams, where you can have smaller teams doing, smaller services that are interdependent in more complex ways. And those services are often implemented in different languages depending on the nature of the challenge for that service. So in New Relic's own environment, for example, we have Node, Go, Ruby, Java, all interconnected in our production environment, and we see that in our customers' environments too. Why that matters is because New Relic is the only company that has more coverage of more languages than any other company, so with Python and Node and all these other modern programming languages, so that as companies address more and more technologies to build out their production environment, we've got the data to show what we need to cover next, and we do a good job of doing that.
So what are the business implications of these development trends that you were just describing?
Well, I mean, the reason why people are doing this is all about agility, time to market, and a great customer experience. If you go back to what I was saying before, that it's if you're a modern bank, for example, I think the quality of your iPhone and Android app is equally important to the customer experience to the branches themselves. And it may be, I would dare say it impacts the customer experience more than the physical branches for especially younger customers. So, how do modern enterprises deliver the very best customer experience? Well, they've got to be agile and nimble, and they can't be spending their time addressing problems that other people are expert at. And so what are some problems that they don't have time to address? Well, building data centers, building their own monitoring tools, standing up on-premise technologies to monitor their application. That's all wasted time and energy that could be built into developing a great customer experience. And so that's why we see, I think, this move to DevOps, where that helps software projects iterate faster and automate more. And it's also why there's a need to sort of see into the software in a real-time basis, because a problem in the software is a problem in your business now.
What about mobile? What is your data telling you about mobile and mobile trends?
What we're seeing in mobile is that it reminds me of the APM market about 12, 13 years ago, where we're now getting to the stage where companies have had enough time and experience with their mobile projects to realize the importance of delivering a great customer experience. It's not just about measuring how many people use my app. It's measuring how responsive is the app, how many errors are in the app, how does that vary by geography or by version, and do I have problems in how my app behaves? Because if an app is slow, if let's say, for example, you've got an automatic payment app where you're a retailer and you want people to use your automatic payment app. If it takes 10 or 15 seconds for that app to spin up, people aren't going to do it. They're going to try it twice, and then they're never going to revisit, right? So what we're seeing now is companies recognizing that they need to see inside the mobile app the way they see into their server. And the reason why this reminds me of the very early 2000s was until pretty recently, most mobile apps were developed by third parties who were expert in building iOS and Android applications, and then after that outsourcing, maybe it's brought back in-house. Well, as this becomes more of a core competency of the enterprise, where like your mobile app is your front door for the world, then that has to be brought in-house. That expertise has to be brought in-house. And when things are brought in-house and you've got to own the success of the project, that's when there's more of an investment in tools like New Relic Mobile to make sure that it delivers a great customer experience.
So is it the business people who are driving these concerns about performance and customer experience, user experience, and whether users will drop off because the performance isn't there, or is it the development folks?
I would say it's so the the issue with business is it's such a business people is it's such a broad term. The role is not sort of clear enough. So we think of it as the application owner, the person who's responsible for the success of the project, and that usually includes product management, development, and maybe marketing, right? But it's the person who determines what's the app going to do and what are the key metrics to make it successful. And so those are the people that are insisting on a great customer experience. They know the importance of an app that's stable. So they'll listen to their developers who will recommend New Relic to make sure that they've got the data they need to be successful. Then they love also seeing the higher level KPIs that we can deliver for them in real time.
Okay, so really it's a mixture going across, you said product management, development, and marketing. So it's both the development people and people on the quote unquote nebulous business side. Right,
and it's like the closest, the closest specific role I'd say is product management, and then followed by just like the application owner, which could be a general manager. It depends, or chief digital officer. It varies by project depending on the nature of the project, but it's the person who's on the hook for the success of the whole software project.
Which ultimately, I suppose, most of the time would be a business person. That's
I mean, like if it's a small company, it's the CEO. If you're a SaaS company, it's the CEO, right? If it's a digital project in a large enterprise, it could be the chief digital officer, or it might be the general manager for that project.
Do your customers tend to be more innovative companies? And the reason I ask is because for many established companies, it's difficult to get strong communication across departments with sharing of information and the collaboration that you're describing.
Our customers do tend to have an innovative mindset. And so it's not, and that mindset exists to varying degrees in almost every company. Sometimes it's at the core of the whole company and the whole company's bought into, and it could be an enormous enterprise, but they're all entirely bought into public cloud, to SaaS, and to agility. Other companies, that's less ingrained into the thinking of the company at this point, and so they're a little more cautious with adopting things like cloud. But then we see in business units or new modern digital projects, they're all in cloud. Because I don't think there's a business you can find today that doesn't have some level of investment, or it's very few, only laggards that don't have some investment in cloud technologies. So it's more of a mindset. And I think of it this way: there's a mindset of playing offense with software versus playing defense with software. When I use that term, I mean like playing defense with software is thinking about software as a cost reduction tool to automate existing processes. And software can be used for that. It has been used for that for decades. Making payroll a little bit faster and a little more predictable. That's great defense with software. Playing offense with software is growing the top line for your whole company. Is changing the customer experience with how they integrate with your companies. Your company can take share. And that mindset tends to really love what New Relic offers, because our platform integrates all of the data I've just been talking about.
So it's not just about so New Relic is not just about driving efficiencies in the software development process, but it's actually about providing a product advantage, so to speak, or a user.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And of course we help on the efficiency side too. We have many customers that say, wow, I've reduced my hosting bill or my infrastructure cost dramatically because New Relic told me how to gain efficiency. But if we just stop there, while that does offer value to our customers, we feel like we've not delivered on our full potential. And our full potential is to help companies meaningfully grow their top line.
And so in a way, this is implied by the things you just said, but how are you different from a traditional enterprise software company? Put it that way.
I'd say the most fundamental difference I think of New Relic is we are a product-first company. We're a product-driven company. And so we care immensely about the ease of use and design and time to value of our products. And we want our product to be so compelling that we're drawn into larger and larger opportunities. And our business grows as a natural effect of having a product that people love to use. And I'd say that's been at the core of our success to date. And we continue to grow at a rapid rate, largely because people love our product and they tell their friends about it. So honestly, a lot of traditional enterprise software companies, I think they've lost that. The previous generation ones in particular, especially in and around the kind of traditional IT management space. And so, you know, if you look outside my office, I'm in my office right now, and if I were to like walk 10 feet that way, the lead designer for the company is right there. That's the person closer to my office than anyone else. And so that's because we care so much about having products people love to use. And I think that in the modern era with the cloud, where people can try out products before they have a sales engagement, or they certainly talk to their colleagues a lot, there's a lot more transparency now than there was 10 or 15 years ago, where you had to rely on maybe what a salesperson told you, or you know, a lot of uncertainty about how the product experience would be, and you had to make your purchase decision in advance of that and take a lot of risk on that. And so we think in the modern era, the decisions made while you evaluate the software and the experience you have in using the software has a huge impact on that, and that's why we're growing at a rate far faster than our market.
You know, that's really interesting what you said about the lead product designer sits 15 feet from your office. The only other company where larger company, as opposed to a startup where everybody's, you know, more or less in the same room, company where I've heard of that happening is Infor, where you know, they're an older established company, but Charles Phillips, their CEO, is trying to change their culture, and their designers, they created an in-house design department, and that design department is the closest group to his office.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, I think it's super important. I mean, I think of myself as a very passionate product person, and I think different CEOs have different areas of focus based on their skill set and interests, and they hire remarkably. If you want to be successful as a CEO, you want to hire remarkably talented people to cover for your weaknesses. And so I've got a remarkably capable president who was the president of sales at Salesforce and has forgotten more than I'll ever learn about growing a business and being successful in the field. And so it's not that I don't love visiting customers, but it's not my strength to, like, you know, run the sales organization. But I'm very passionate about the product. And so I spend a lot of time not only with the lead designer, but with engineers. And occasionally I try to go away and I call it coding retreats. 4 to 6 times a year, I'll go to a remote location to build something or experiment or prototype. And those coding retreats have often turned into new innovations that have turned into new products and new opportunities for us.
So you're obviously very hands-on and very focused on the product. How do you create a culture inside the company that respects that set of values?
Well, I think it comes pretty naturally when, you know, if your founder CEO is very, very deep into the product, then that tends to drive a culture that's a little different from a CEO who spends all their time looking at the pipeline. You know, there are many different ways to make a business successful. We like to think of it as, you know, the business can't succeed without great sales and great revenue growth and all those sorts of things. But great sales and great revenue growth at our company ought to be a natural extension of a great product that is a joy to sell.
That's again really interesting. You're a public company, and so one would think, well, you know, you're focused more than anything on the numbers, and yet you're saying your focus is. Go ahead.
I mean, the numbers are super important. They are, but I forget exactly the quote that Jeff Bezos said, but it was something on the lines of, if we had a good quarter, if we just report a good quarter, it's reflective of great decisions we made, I don't know, 6 quarters ago, right? So the better a job we do in making a great product that people love, that people tell their friends about, and a better job we do on all parts of our company, like thinking about our financial model, thinking about how we efficiently scale the go-to-market organization, thinking about how we deliver the right message to our constituents in an effective way that differentiates our brand. I mean, if we do all that work, then it's a more natural motion for us to deliver the business. That's also, that thinking is fundamental into how we fund the company on our business model. We're 100% subscription business. all the selling we do right now is for future revenues, right? And so that has a much higher level of predictability than a company that lives or dies by the traditional license and maintenance model. Of course, that's hardly unique today. There's a lot of excitement about SaaS delivery models. But I'd say when I founded the company, this wasn't, and decided on this model, it wasn't because I read about it in on a hot blog. It was because I've lived the traditional license and maintenance horror story before, where basically you lived and died by a handful of deals in the last few days of the quarter. And that drove the whole company, and pretty soon you forgot about product integrity. So we've decided to build a business model, a company that's well suited to us staying true to our North Star of great products, and can still be effective as a public company. And so far it's been working.
So what does this mean then for the difference as CEO, this difference between the on-premise model versus the subscription model and the cloud mindset? And I don't mean financially, but from a culture standpoint, what does this mean for your strategy and how you actually run the business, run the company?
Well, we fundamentally believe that being all in on cloud is a long-term strategic advantage for us, and for a few ways. One, of course, our customers get continual improvements in their software on a regular basis. And we're, the New Relic that our customers use today is better than the New Relic they used last week. We don't have to invest in our precious resources, our precious technical and product resources and support resources on old versions of the software, right? That can be an enormous drain, especially as you grow to scale. But what's really exciting to me as a cloud company is what we can do with all this data we're collecting that you can't really do as an on-premise company. Let me give you some context. We collect about 3 million software analytics events every second into our cloud. That's more than 100 times the tweet volume that's going on in the entire world right now, just as context. And we're able to analyze it all in real time. Our customers are continually querying these events in real time. And in fact, I regularly see our software analytics cloud querying billions of events per second for our customers. So this data that is coming from the insides of software, we can and should do more and more things to be smarter about the analysis of that data. Not only are, the history of our space has been presenting charts of this data to help a human kind of figure out problems. And there have been a few companies that have talked about, well, what if I can do, quote, autonomic computing or an intelligent approach where you don't have a human look at charts to figure out the problems, you figure out the problems yourself. The problem is none of it's ever really worked because the technologies have been on-premise. You must experiment with your algorithms to see whether your algorithms are any good. In order to do that, you need a ton of data to run the experiment on. And only New Relic has this massive data. So I believe our long-term opportunity is having a smarter and smarter cloud that it creates more and more incentive for our customers to put more data into our cloud, and it has this remarkable flywheel effect.
So as you collect this data, where do you envision the company going? How will you use this data to benefit your customers?
Look, our customers are very pressed for time. They're overwhelmed with an incredibly deep backlog of things to do. It's not easy to run a production operation environment today where the stakes are so high, the cost of downtime is so high, and there's so much stuff to monitor and so much stuff to watch. In fact, more than a human can watch. So we want to put more and more smarts into our cloud to reduce the amount of effort that an operations person needs to do to keep the site running. And the only way, I think, to do that in a really effective, high quality way is to have an enormous amount of real data about what real customers are doing, what real applications are doing, so that when you build your algorithms, those algorithms have the data upon which to assess their effectiveness and improve on a continual basis. It's kind of like, could you imagine, Google search just gets better and better on a continual basis because they can see how effective their searches are on the whole internet right now and then improve on it. if Google search was like an on-premise appliance, there's no way that they could improve it in a continual way the same way. So that's kind of the analogy that I think of.
Are there specific examples that you can think of where having this massive set of data will apply directly to customer problems, solve customer solution, provide customer solutions?
We're hard at work at very specific examples of that right now that it's a little premature for me to share the details. But suffice it to say that we've got very bright days ahead for New Relic as we continue to innovate in this space.
We have just about 10 minutes left. What advice do you have for IT departments in this whole mix and CIOs who are just facing enormous change in the environment?
My advice, first of all, I have empathy. It's an enormous amount of change. And IT professionals have invested an awful lot of time and energy and to become expert at delivering great service quality in an approach that is going under an immense change right now. So you have to rethink a lot of things on how are you going to continue to succeed in a world that demands a much higher level of agility and a much quicker time to market, much higher level of availability than just a few years past. It's unquestionably true that everybody is moving to so many workloads to public cloud. That has to be a big part of your strategy, and it is this big part of strategies for IT departments and companies of virtually every size. So my advice to all of you is to see this as an opportunity to learn and grow, and think about how do you reduce the risk of migrating workloads to the cloud? How do you increase the likelihood that this will deliver a better experience, a more secure experience, a higher performance experience for your customers than it has in the past in a traditional hosting environment? And then think about what's the whole purpose of these projects anyway? There's a business purpose for every project. You don't fund 10, 20, 100 developers on a project without having business goals. So there's been talk about aligning T with the business forever. Right? The way you align IT with the business, I think, is you measure the health of the software and then express it in business terms, all with the same platform, so that you connect the business outcome with the health of the software. And that's where I think we can offer a great deal of help for companies that are moving workloads into the cloud.
To measure the health of the software and express it in business terms. Maybe that seems like a really key point. Maybe just elaborate on that.
Sure, it could be something as simple as we have an elevated error rate on a mid-level service. Okay, that is a technical term that would mean almost nothing to the line of business exec. But if I said, 6% of our customers are seeing errors when they try to add an item to a cart, that's a business outcome because it's talking in terms of people. And it's talking about what the function those people are trying to do. And you can pretty quickly get in a sense of what's the business impact of that problem. And that's a very different problem from 0.1% of our customers are having a trouble updating their change of address form. And so if I've got to change, if I've got to prioritize my work, now I've got this business impact to help prioritize my work, and certainly is a more valuable way to report up to the chain. And of course, let's think about the positive case where it's like, since we improved the performance of add to cart, we've seen a 6% increase in the number of people that have added items to the cart, and that's resulted in a higher level of revenue, which New Relic Insights could also measure in real time, so that our revenues are up 2% over the last 2 weeks, and it correlates with the improvement in performance. Those are the types of things that we can do.
So a key point then is express the technical context in business terms that the marketing manager or the product manager would care about, for example. Every stakeholder has a slightly different language or a slightly different view into what's important to them, right? And so
being able to present, elevated error rate on this particular servlet and this service on this server, that's like, that's handy to an ops person, a DevOps person, a developer, and so we speak that language. But then with New Relic Insights, we can also speak the language of the technical support manager or the line of business manager or the marketer. And it's all based on the same data.
And then I assume, really, you could apply the same lesson that you were just describing for IT. You could apply that same lesson to developers who want to make an effort to try to bridge the gap that they have with their business stakeholders.
Absolutely. And, one of the things I've learned is that the better a developer is able to empathize with the customer, the experience they're having, the better your products. And so if a developer knows that the code they're writing is turning into a really poor experience or is being used in a different way than what they expected, that helps them better empathize with the customer experience, and it usually turns into better products.
That's really interesting. So empathy for the user is shall we say, a key success factor for writing the best software products.
I think that's true for virtually every function. I mean, in a way, it's just one of those business truisms, right? If your company really can empathize with your customer, you're going to do a better job solving their problem. I mean, that's even true when I go, there's some airlines I fly where I feel like that's in the culture of the airline. There's some airlines where I don't feel like they have an empathy. It's almost like their execs have never flown their own airline. It's not specific to developers in general, but it's like if you can connect every stakeholder to the end customer, then you're going to have a better customer experience. And the customer experience is going through software. That software is measured by New Relic. That's why we matter.
And how do you, this is obviously a point about which you feel very strongly or passionate. So how do you ensure that your organization at New Relic is filled with people who have that empathy and, again, have the culture of having that as a goal? Mm-hmm.
We do obsess pretty hard on building a culture that creates an environment where people love I use the term, loving your Mondays. So people see work not as this means to an end, but actually as an integral part of the joy, or a big part of a source of joy in their life. And it comes down to two things. I think the first factor is everyone in the company, no matter what your role, no matter how junior or senior, everyone needs to matter and needs to feel like they matter. What they do matters, and what they do is contributing, and it's challenging, and it's helping them grow. That's the first thing. And the second thing is you must do your work with people who bring out the best in you, who encourage you, who give you energy, right? Who make you want to do your best and want to deliver great outcomes, because there are other people on this journey with you that you want to make successful just as much as your own success. And so if those two things are happening, then I think we've got a culture that helps us withstand tough times and helps us excel in good times. And that's the hallmark of great companies. So we are very thoughtful about this. And of course, that the culture is so much more important to our company's success than any other factor, including technology. But of course, we eat our own dog food, and every function in our company uses New Relic Insights to connect our employees to our customers.
We only have just a minute left, and we haven't really spoken about being an entrepreneur and a company founder. But just one final question. What distilled essential advice would you have for entrepreneurs and founders? You founded a company and then you sold it. You founded a second company, New Relic, and you've taken it public. What is your sort of distilled wisdom for entrepreneurs?
Well, in 1 minute or less, it's the most important lessons I've ever learned in both my companies have been about myself. I feel like self-awareness is, without question, the most important skill necessary to continue to grow and succeed in leading a company, and just grow and succeed in any function. So basically, what I tell entrepreneurs when they think about starting a company, I say, I have no idea whether the idea will succeed. There's a lot of risk in all startups, but what I guarantee you is that if you give it your all, you're going to learn an immense amount about yourself, and that is of an incredible value. So what I learned about myself from my journey at Wily helped inform my thinking on how I would lead New Relic and the team I needed to bring along with me on the journey and how I would fit inside that team. So that's how I distill it down. You know, I'm not done with learning about myself, that's for sure.
So self-awareness and the corollary would be insight are
Yes.
the most important things.
Yes.
Great. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time. There's a lot more that we could talk about. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, Lew.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Happy holidays.
We have been speaking on episode number 148 with Lew Cirne, who is the founder and the CEO of New Relic. Lew, again, thank you very much. Really appreciate your taking the time.
Thank you.
And everybody, thank you for watching. Next week, there's no CXOTalk because it's Christmas, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. And we have amazing guests lined up for January and February into March. So come back, and I hope everybody has a great holiday, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you. Bye-bye.